Picture this then, right? You've hooked the catch of a lifetime. You're at sea, and for the last hour, you've been wrestling with a 13-foot mako shark, 500 pounds of apex predator, trying to wear the damn thing out. You're exhausted, but you're exhilarated, and you can sense in your bones this battle is finally coming to an end. The shark dives deep below the surface, making one last-ditch effort to shake free that hook and win its freedom. So you apply pressure. You make him fight for every inch, and finally, his spirit breaks. With no fight left, the line goes slack, and quickly you reel the thing in. All your mates, they rush to the side of the boat. They're ready to help you haul the big thing out of the water, but when it breaks the surface, something's wrong. It isn't a mako shark, or at least not all of one. Not anymore. Howdy doody, lovely happy people. It seems like I'm introducing this one today because the other guy, well, is in a bit of a strop. I am not in a strop. Yeah, you are. You're full marred today. I am not full marred. Work has just been kicking our backside recently, so I'm a little bit knackered, alright? Right, yeah. We came home in a right old bad mood, so we decided to write an episode on something which grinds our gears a little bit. And that is the ocean. You see, we are terrified of water, utterly petrified of it. So much so that we don't even shower, you know. We scrape the dirt off our bodies using sharp, pointy sticks. No, what are you on about? We're not scared of water. We're not a mogwai for crying out loud. We bathe like everybody else. Oh, but we do hate the ocean, though. No, we don't hate it. We have a healthy respect for it. It's a powerful beast, and it deserves that respect. Yeah, that it does. And it's not the ocean itself that grinds our gears. It's how little we seem to know about it. You know, I am pretty sure that humanity knows more about what's buried beneath the surface of the moon than it does about what's bobbing around in our seas. You mean besides sewage and discarded nuclear waste? Yeah, besides that. And so we decided that today's episode is going to explore that area of the unknown a little bit more. Yeah, and we're going to kick off this little look into those cold, dark depths with a simple question. What killed Alpha Shark? Right, this is the story that got us first interested in this particular area of the unknown, and it's one science still doesn't have a clear-cut answer to. It's got theories though. Yeah, but nothing concrete as far as we've been able to discern. Yeah, and for those that aren't familiar with this particular tale, let me furnish you with some deets, alright? Alpha Shark was a 9-foot female great white shark that was captured, tagged, and then released as part of a marine study in the early 2000s off the coast of Australia. And 4 months after it was tagged, the satellite tag washes up on a local beach, minus the shark. And when the data is reviewed to try and determine what happened to the rest of the fish, a very unusual pattern emerges. The data shows that the tag suddenly takes a dive of 2,000 feet down a continental shelf into the Bremer Canyon. And it does this at great speed, like 30 plus miles per hour speed. Now, it's not clear whether Alpha was caught and dragged, or whether this was her attempting some sort of evasion technique, but either way, at 2,000 feet down, it's game over. Alpha is apparently consumed by something which has an ambient body temperature 32 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the ambient ocean around them. And this is evidenced by a jump in temperature recorded on the tag from 46 up to 78 degrees. Yeah, that tag is belly bound now, innit? It's inside something for sure. Yeah, 100% for sure. And the tag stays at this exact temperature, 78 degrees, for 8 days straight, before it's presumably pooped out and then drifts back to shore. So, do we think she was running then, or do we think she was dragged? Well, I reckon most likely running. You see, great whites, they can swim at speeds up to 35 miles per hour in short bursts, and they have been known to dive downwards to try and avoid air-breathing predators like killer whales. Well, in this case, whatever she was trying to avoid clearly wasn't playing by the rules that she was used to, because her evasion, it didn't work. Or whatever was chasing her was just bigger and faster than anything she'd had run-ins with previously. Something rare, yeah? Yeah, something unseen. So, are we into the realm of sea monsters then? Oh yeah, I hope so. There are so many unexplained sightings, it's hard to believe that there isn't something out there that is as yet undiscovered. Yeah, all those nutcases can't be wrong, can they? But if Alpha wasn't that mako shark you were waffling on about earlier, then what was the point in that? Was that just some sort of dramatic hook? Well, worst fishing pun in the world aside, kinda yeah. And it was actually based on a real occurrence. It's something that happened to a guy who goes by the name of Trapman. He originally hooked a smaller shark, but before he was able to reel it in, the larger mako shark then ate it. And before he could reel that one in, something bigger still ate it? Yeah. And 3 guesses where this happened. Same place that Alpha disappeared? Yep, near enough. Off the coast of Australia. And Trapman actually has his own YouTube channel. I'll link it below if you want to check it out for yourselves. Awesome. Intro over and done with then. Let's do it. Let's sink our own teeth into a list of potential sea beasties. Righto. I'm going to kick this one off by immediately ruling out the 2 most common theories. Number 1, killer whales, orcas. Yes, they sometimes kill and eat sharks, but their ambient body temperature is way too hot. They're mammals, so they would be about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 20 odd degrees hotter than whatever ate Alpha, so no dice. And then the second one would have been a larger cannibalistic shark, and in that one I'm also including the potential of a rogue as yet undiscovered megalodon in this theory as well. Yes, big sharks do eat smaller sharks, but we would have the opposite issue with this one. Sharks are cold-blooded, and therefore their temperature would be about 20 degrees too cold. Oh, so we've got a 3 bears dilemma, have we? One belly's too hot, one belly's too cold. We need a belly that's just right. Yeah, and that's a good thing, because we don't want this to be any sort of normal attack, do we? No, of course not. That would be boring, and we don't want boring. We want something wild. So, could it have been the Kraken? Everyone loves the Kraken. Well, the Kraken, as legendary as that mythological creature is, it's actually believed to have been based on a very real, giant or colossal squid. Ugh, real. Boring! Yeah, boring. And I'm writing both giant and colossal squids off immediately as well, for one very simple reason. They both have baby mouth. Their mouths just aren't big enough. Wait, I thought they were like massive creatures. Well, yeah, they are. They're up to like 46 feet in length, which is absolutely huge. About the length of a standard coach, so easily big enough to catch a wee little 9-foot shark. But their baby mouth would have been too small. It wouldn't have been big enough to swallow that very solid satellite tracking tag. Not only are their mouths small, their brain, weirdly, is actually donut-shaped, and the esophagus, the throat, passes straight through the middle of it. Hey? They swallow through their brain? Yep. Do they also poop out of their ear then or something? No, well, I don't actually know, but I'd assume not, because I'm pretty sure squids don't have ears. But anyway, the point is their throat and brain combo would be so narrow that if they tried swallowing that tracking tag, it would basically give them brain damage and kill them. Yeah, well, that's just dumb. They should have evolved better. Stupid squid. Stupid squid. Yeah, but don't be disheartened. Mr. Kraken isn't the only oceanic cryptid out there. There are plenty more we can choose from. Ooh, do tell. Well, there's so many in fact that we aren't going to have time to go through all of them. Okay, fine, so pick your favourites and go through those ones instead. Yeah, we'll do. Cool. So I'll try and rattle through them as quickly as I can so we can fit in as many of them as possible. And I'm going to start with number 4 and number 5, plesiosaurs and mosasaurs. Now, these are 2 fan favourites when it comes to water-faring beasties. Plesiosaurs in particular seem to get spotted all the time in lakes and oceans alike, all the way around the world. Oh, that's your good old Nessie-type beastie, isn't it? Okay, yes it is. These are believed to be prehistoric beasts that somehow managed to survive the Great Extinction and continue to lurk in hiding around the world to this very day. Although the Loch Ness Monster is arguably one of the most famous, there are a lot more alleged sightings of similar beasties in lakes and oceans literally all over the place. They are very, very widespread. But you're going to write these ones off too, aren't you? Yeah, it couldn't have been either. Because they don't exist? Well, that remains to be seen, and I am not going to rule out the existence of anything on this list. We can explore that some other time. But when it comes down to the attack on Alpha, then it simply could not have been either. From what we know of them, their bodies would have ran far too hot. Hotter than Jason Momoa? Hotter than most mammals, yeah. Why are you singling out Jason Momoa? Well, I'm not man-crushing on him or anything, if that's what you're thinking. No, it's not. It's nothing like that. I just thought it might possibly have been him. That's all. So you thought Jason Momoa killed and ate a 9-foot great white shark? Well, yeah. He's a beast of a man, isn't he? And think about it logically. For another predator to get close enough to make a run at Alpha, then Alpha surely mustn't have suspected that that predator was a threat until it was too late. Okay, and so how does that logically tie back to A-list celebrity Jason Momoa? Well, he can talk to fish, can't he? He probably charmed the old girl, you know, lured her in with some sort of sexy eyebrow dance. And then, when it was too late, bam! Nom 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 nom! Right, you're talking about Aquaman. And you do realise that those movies weren't documentaries, right? They aren't real people. Ah, well, how do you know? I thought you weren't ruling out the existence of anything. Yeah, well, whatever. Whether Aquaman exists or not, it couldn't have been him either. It couldn't have been him, a plesiosaur, or a mosasaur, because the body temperature of all three would have been way, way too high. Okay? Right, fine, fair enough. Do we continue? Thank you. Number 5 on our list is the black carpet. Now, this is a pretty recent addition in the annals of cryptids, but it does sound pretty cool. The black carpet initially appears like an oil slick floating under the water, and it can be absolutely massive, like hundreds and hundreds of meters across. And it looks pretty sedate until it gets close, and then tentacles shoot out, they grab you and they drag you in. It's basically described as like a fungus or parasite that infects marine life and absorbs them into its mass. Okay, well, we're defo never going swimming ever again. Yeah, at least not in the sea anyway. But back on topic, it couldn't have been this, or a creature even remotely like this, as it wouldn't have been able to give chase. You know, whatever it was, it chased Alpha 2,000 feet down, and this creature basically just drifts, so it's unlikely to be able to travel at 30 plus miles per hour. Well, unless it was related to the carpet from Aladdin, you know, that thing could shift. Yeah, but it also lived in the desert, you know, the cartoon desert, the fake, not real, not even live action desert. So I'm going to move on, alright? Next one on the list, number 6, is the monstrous hog, otherwise known as sea swine. Ah, ocean piggies. Well, yeah, pretty much. These are another creature of legend. They are described as having the face of a pig, long tusks, long hairy bodies, forked tails, 4 dragon-like feet, and eyes on their flanks and their belly. Now, throughout history, several corpses of these odd fish-like pigs have reportedly been washed up, but unfortunately, none of those have been recent. And this lack of modern evidence has led to the belief that they aren't real creatures at all, but are actually just misidentifications of things like walrus and elephant seals, you know, but who knows? Yeah, I've never seen a walrus with a belly eye, have you? No, I haven't. And back in the day, these things were so commonly accepted as being real that they were often depicted on nautical maps. What, you mean like those sketches of the kraken and whirlpools and sea dragons and all that sort of stuff? Yeah, exactly like that. And as you might have noticed, all those things were generally believed to pose a serious danger to sailors. They were considered a legitimate threat, which is why they were added to those maps. Gotcha, so the monstrous hog was believed to be dangerous then? Well, it would seem that way, yeah. But dangerous enough to chase and kill a great white shark? Well, if it can potentially sink a ship, well then it must have loose lips. No, that's that isn't what I was thinking. Fine, well, go on then. Get it over and done with. Tell us why it can't be this particular one. I can't do that. Other than the general belief that they aren't actually real, I've got no way of actually disproving this theory. If they are real, we have no idea what their digestive cycle is like, what their diet is, how fast they are, what depths they live at, or what their body temperature is. Oh, awesome. So this is our first genuine suspect then. If it's real, it may very well be. Cool. Next up then, number 7, is a little fella, or a little lass, called Cabagon. Now this weird looking thing was spotted back in 1974 off the coast of New Zealand by all 28 crew members, including the captain of a Japanese fishing vessel. All they actually saw of it was the head. It allegedly lurched up out of the water a short distance away from their boat, and then watched them intently for quite some time, before eventually disappearing back below the water. Okay, come on then. We're all dying to know. What did it look like? Did it have big sharp teeth? Did it have scary claws, horns, scales, demonic eyes? No, not really. The sketches created of it kind of make it look like a giant thumb. From what the witnesses described, the head of it rose about 1.5 meters out of the water. It had grey skin, deep red eyes and large nostrils. Oh, well that doesn't sound very scary. Yeah, I agree. Based on that, no, it does not. So what makes you think it could have killed Alpha then? Well, several reasons. For one, the proximity. It was spotted fairly close to where Alpha went missing, you know, in the grand scheme of things. Plus, we have no idea whatsoever what the rest of it looked like under the water. As you can imagine, if just the top of its head was 1.5 meters tall, then this thing could have been absolutely massive. But the main reason I've included it in here is because of its similarity to the ancient legend of Umi Bozu. Now, Umi Bozu was an often vengeful sea spirit from Japanese mythology that was reportedly seen a lot between the 1600s and the 1800s. It was described as a giant humanoid and was often depicted with just its head bobbing out of the water. It would emerge during storms and was reported to intentionally seek out and kill any sailor who mentioned it or discussed it in any way. Oh, I guess we better be careful then. No, I think we'll be okay. We are not a sailor, and nor do we ever plan to become one. Right, fair enough, but if this thing lurches out of the toilet and eats us nuts first, then I am firmly blaming you for it. Yeah, if that happens, I am happy to admit responsibility. Carrying on though, this thing, otherwise known as the sea monk, was so terrifying to fishermen that when one was sighted, they often refused to work. They would much rather risk poverty and possibly even starvation than to tangle with one of these creatures. Right, so they took this one pretty seriously then, yeah? Yeah. On occasion, they allegedly even caught what they assumed to be juvenile sea monks in their nets, and when this happened, they would throw them back in a mad panic. There are even some accounts of fishing boats getting surrounded by multiple smaller sea monks, who would cry out when the sailors struck them with the oars. And this would suggest they are actually more flesh and bone rather than vengeful spirit. But we don't know if they eat fish though, do we? No, unfortunately we don't, because one has never been caught, witnessed or studied by any modern day people. Okay then, so that means we have 2 possible culprits out of 7 then, that we can't disprove? Yeah we do, but forget them, because we have one more, and this one, believe it or not, is actually very, very likely to be the culprit. Now, I don't know what to call this last beastie, so for the purposes of this vid, I am going to name it Hawthorne Maximus. And that is because the first time I ever discovered this particular theory was on a blog by a best-selling fiction writer, Max Hawthorne. Now, that isn't to say it was originally his theory, but that is where we first saw it. And all waffling aside, he is defo a pretty smart man. So I personally am more than happy to credit him with that particular theory. If you don't believe me, look him up. Now, his theory proposes that Alpha was actually chased and eaten by an as yet undiscovered species of sea turtle. What? Our boys Mikey and Donnie are eating sharks now, are they? Well, like Aquaman, they also aren't real. But for the purpose of this theory, you know, what the hell? I'm going to say yeah. It could have been Mikey or Donnie. But thinking about it, actually, it was more likely to be Raph, you know. Raph was always the beefy one, wasn't he? And whatever this thing was, it had to be big. Mr. Hawthorne theorises that it's most likely a form of supersized carnivorous leatherback turtle. And if there's one out there, it would definitely fit the profile perfectly. For one, Alpha would have had dealings with turtles before, and probably wouldn't have realised that this one was such a massive threat until it got too close. For two, leatherbacks are known to have an ambient body temperature which is 32 degrees Fahrenheit above the ambient water temperature, and that fits our jump to 78 degrees absolutely perfectly. For three, they have a relatively long digestive cycle which would fit the 8-day period perfectly before the tracking tag was pooped out. For four, turtles are also air breathers, which means they typically spend most of their time near the surface. In this case, the 8 days that tag spent in the beastie's belly had it doing exactly that. It was constantly travelling somewhere between 0 and 300 feet down. And for five, leatherback turtles are already known to swim at speeds of up to 24 miles per hour. Now, if this was a supersized version, then it would almost certainly be capable of speeds excessive enough to run down our poor little Alpha. In this scenario, the shoe seems to fit. Everything about the incident does undeniably line up perfectly with the theory of a giant fish-eating turtle. Yeah, but has anyone ever seen a giant turtle? I can't say I've heard any stories recently. Actually, there are more than you might think. There is Ogua, a 20-foot long snapping turtle, believed to live around the West Virginia area of the US. And then there's also the beast of Busco, an even larger snapping turtle from India. And although both of those are considered freshwater creatures, there's no reason why they couldn't have a shared ancestry with our beastie. And if we were to talk specifically about ocean-faring beasties, there are potentially hundreds of historical sightings of giant turtles. Some of the reports were of turtles so large, people even mistook them for islands and land masses, until they dove under the water, of course. If we were to take those reports at face value, it would suggest a turtle of absolutely insane proportions. So what about now? What about recent? Okay, if we must focus solely on the modern era, the most famous recent sighting was from angler Garry Liimatta, when he saw a creature which he took to be a giant turtle frolicking on the surface of the waters in the North Pacific. Now, his estimation put the beast to be around 38 feet in length, with a neck that was about 8 feet thick. Defo big enough to swallow a slim little great white shark then? Yeah, like slipping down an oily kipper. And do you want to know what was especially great about Garry's sighting? Yeah, what? Well, he caught the whole damn thing on video. Yeah, boy! Now we're talking. But do you want to know what was not so great about Garry's sighting? Oh man, don't knock the thunder out of my sails now. Well, I'm sorry, but the recording was made in 1969, and so therefore was filmed on a grainy old 8mm camera. If I can find a decent enough link, I'll bang it down in the description below. But do not set your sights too high on this one. It is pretty hard to make out. If you are interested though, Max Hawthorne does do a much more detailed analysis of that recording on his blog. And I gotta say, it's pretty convincing. So, are we sold on this one then, are we? Well, I don't know about you, but I am. I guess I'll have to be too then, won't I? Yeah, cool. But before we wrap up, I just want to get some angst off my chest. You know, like you called out earlier, I am top marred today, and one thing that does really grind my gears is people's general attitude towards said sea beasties. Now, I'm not saying I'm a believer in all these sea beasties either, but I'm also not entirely closed off to the idea that there may be something lurking out there which we haven't yet discovered. And the one thing that does do my head in the most is when people say that there categorically cannot be any sea monsters out there because if there were, someone would have seen them by now. The thing is, people are seeing them. They see them all over the oceans, all year long, all over the world. But what tends to happen when someone sees something they can't explain is one of three things. Number one, they assume they were mistaken and just saw a whale, or it was a trick of the light, or something like that. Number two, they know they saw something odd, but then they refuse to speak about it for fear of being ridiculed, being treated like they are crazy, or being accused of being a liar. And then there's number three. They do speak about it, and they are ridiculed, and they are treated like they're crazy, and they are called a liar. Because, as everyone knows, sea monsters don't exist. Because if they did exist, someone would have seen them by now. Yeah, it becomes a vicious cycle. Remember, for hundreds of years, people thought the Kraken was a myth, and that turned out to be based on a real creature. So for hundreds of years, everyone was 100% absolutely, totally, categorically wrong. So, to continue to assume that there categorically can't be anything else out there is ridiculously close-minded. It absolutely does me head in. Yeah, me too, and we could rant about that for hours, couldn't we? So, do you think we should pencil in a part 2 for this one then? Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. You know, there's plenty of valid arguments out there for the potential existence of unknown sea beasties, so it could be an interesting one to sort of delve into and waffle on about for a little while. Yeah, settled then. So, that'll be us peacing out just in time for pizza. Yeah, laters taters, thanks for listening and catch you in the next one.